All right, are we live? There we go. Got the mics running. Got the synths working. Got everything waiting. I think we're live. All right, always got to double check. But welcome, my friends. Another holiday is upon us. And I didn't almost forget. I'm actually on top of it this time. But today we're gonna have some fun like we did last year. We're gonna learn about composing a love theme, or not necessarily learn. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna have some fun with it. Recently, I read a book called Severe Mercy. All right, a memoir about grief, telling the story of a man who lost his wife very young, and the experience, basically remembering her and living through the grief. I don't know. I'm not feeling very eloquent today. But the idea today is I read the book. I thought, oh my goodness, what a beautiful story. What if there was a theme for this? And I thought, cool, let's do this. I haven't really done one like this in a while. Last year I did like a typical love theme, I think. Maybe a little nostalgic, maybe a little bittersweet. Jamal, didn't expect this to be sad. Right? I'm thinking about that. It's going to be a unique one. I'm thinking, so step one to writing any emotional theme is determining what you want to evoke. So there are lots of ways you can do this to writing any kind of theme. But the idea is whether it's a character or a world or an emotion, you want to create a short list of the most important things you want to capture with your music. So with this kind of theme, obviously one of the most important things I want to get this, this is a love theme. It should feel loving / intimate. All right. Number two, obviously, this is a memoir. His wife is dead. I'm sorry, it's not very eloquent. There should be an element of grief. And then, I don't know. Should we think, did anyone think have like a third thing that we want to think? I usually like to have a list of 2 or 3 things. 2 or 3 things that I want to really convey. Things that I can think of as like a foundation for the emotion that I want to portray. So it's a love theme. It should be feeling intimate. So memoir, his wife is dead. There should be an element of grief. Ooh, this is a memoir. There should be an element of time, memories. All right. So if you've read my book on emotions and music, if you've gone through any of my classes on film scoring or anything, you understand that the idea of coming up with these basic ideas is these are going to be the backbone of my sources of inspiration. Now, I have lots of tools available to figure this out. If you have a character, how do you break down the character study, their growth, their arc? How do you understand what the most important elements of the characters are? I have that all detailed in my textbook, The Musical Storyteller. I have the same things available for emotions, for worlds, all kinds of cool stuff. But since this is a live stream, I'm just kind of going based off my instincts. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my 9 parameters of music. All right, tempo, timbre, texture, rhythm, register. We'll say 6, register, dynamics, harmony, articulation, and melody or pitch. Technically, the original one is pitch, but I treat it much more like melody. Yes, there are differences, but since most of the time whenever someone thinks about how am I going to use pitch, they tend to go towards melody. I just call it melody. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these ideas. I'm going to brainstorm what ideas come to me for each of these. So we'll say intimacy. Let's say slower tempo, lower energy, Let's create, let's see, grief. Again, same thing. And memory slash time. Ooh. I have a lot of ideas. I don't know how I want to. Yes, 23. Glad you see the parameters. Memory or time. I have this idea. Let's play with multiple pulses. So there's lots of different ways you can define pulse in music theory. The definition I'm using now is how long your average note is compared to the beat. So if you have like a BPM of 60 BPM, so we can actually say 60 BPM tied with time. All right, so 60 BPM, 1 beat per second. If I have a layer that constantly ticks away at 60 BPM to emphasize the idea of time ticking by, but then my melody moves much slower, those are different pulses. So the accompaniment moves at a faster pace than the melody. This is how you can have a 60 BPM. I don't know if that's actually 60 BPM, but like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you can have an accompaniment that's like bum, bum. We're moving much slower than the beat. And then you can have a melody that's moving much faster. Stuff like that. So different layers can have different speeds compared to the BPM, and that's what creates pulse. Does that make sense? See, I was thinking of that, 23. So moving on, let's do timbre. I want to just keep this simple. Simple for all three, just stick to piano. I'm gonna make this a solo piano piece. Even though in the book they mentioned being fans of Tchaikovsky and a bunch of the classical composers, there's a lot more we could do. I'm just gonna stick to piano. So for those of you who are joining, welcome. I am writing a love theme based off the book Severe Mercy, which is a memoir I just recently read about a man whose details like the experience of losing his wife at a very young age. So it's going to be a very kind of heavy but sweet, intimate kind of love theme. And what I did is I went through and I identified what parameters of this music I think are most important. This theme needs to feel loving and intimate. There needs to be an element of grief. And because it isn't a memoir, I want to capture a feeling of time. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going through the 9 parameters of music, and I'm brainstorming how each one can be used to create this, to help highlight these ideas. So we'll say intimacy, grief, and time. Memory slash time. So for each of these, texture refers to the number and types of layers in your music. For intimacy, I want to keep this fairly bare bones. Not too much going on. Grief, I don't really have any ideas texture-wise. And that's okay, you don't need to force ideas. This is just a brainstorming exercise. Memory or time, I do like this. I want the accompaniment to track time with a steady beat at 60 BPM. All right, I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be cool. It might be a little cheesy, a little cliche, but it works. Rhythm, intimacy. So for love theme, let's just keep it romantic with a 3/4 feel. All right. Grief, not really thinking anything rhythm-wise. With grief, memory or time, not really thinking anything specific. If you guys have ideas, let me know. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Meliodasiaj. I'm sorry. Gaming, MD Gaming. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by the stream. Register. Intimacy, I like the idea of let's emphasize the upper registers. Let's avoid too much middle register. So creating a a sense of hollowness in the music. And memory or time. I'm not really thinking of anything. I don't know. So I don't really have any ideas for memory or time. Dynamics. Easy. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it soft. Same. Same. With the exception. I want a contrasting section where the size and energy hit a bit harder. All right, so I want like a nice, intimate, beautiful love theme, and then I want a big contrasting statement where it's bigger and more energetic and a little more painful, grief-laden, and then I want it to come back down again. Harmony, here's where we have some fun. All right, intimacy, and like that love, I want extended harmony. All right, and here's another thing that I want. I want to build the harmony based on a variation of the Dies Irae motif. This was an idea I had while reading it. I was like, I gotta try it. It's cliche, but I want to do it. So first off, what am I explaining by this? Intimacy with extended harmony has this beautiful, here we have a C major chord, right? Oop, that's a synthesizer. Let me get a piano. We have a nice C major chord. All right, beautiful, simple, standard. Now watch what happens when we make it minor. It gets darker. What happens if we take that C major and we add a seventh? Ooh, suddenly it's a little more ambiguous. What if we add a ninth? What if we move the voicings around a little bit? Same exact chord I just played, just a different voicing. These confusing sounds, like confusing of the tones, helps create this ambiguous feeling. And this is a lesson I haven't taught in a while. I used to do this one all the time, so I'll break this down real quick. So if we look at major chords, come on. Oh my goodness. Let's make this a bit bigger. C major. We have a major third and a minor third. C minor. We have a minor third and a major third. That's what makes the major chord versus the minor chord. So the major chord sounds stereotypically bright. Not happy, bright. Because there's a lot of bright emotions that aren't necessarily happy. Same with the minor chord. Minor chord sounds dark, not sad. Because there's a lot of dark emotions that aren't necessarily sad. Now what happens if I add a seventh? Well, suddenly, our bottom three notes form a major chord. And the top three form a minor chord, E minor. So you've got this conflicting combination of major and minor to create this beautiful, beautiful Studio Ghibli style sound. It gets even bigger if you add a ninth, because then you have major, minor, major. And if you move these around, like I take this same chord, just different spelling. That beautiful kind of dissonance, right? So that's what I mean by I want to use extended harmony. I want to use those beautifully rich, ambiguous chords. Next, for the Dies Irae is a very ancient, incredibly famous motif taken from the days of Gregorian chant. It was a specific Gregorian chant depicting the day of judgment, Dies Irae, the day of wrath, like the apocalypse. And it goes... And you hear that motif pop up in films, in operas, in songs, in soundtracks of all types and shapes and whatever. It's been used for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to depict death. Almost every major composer has used it at some point. It's almost a rite of passage, to the point now where it's almost a little cliche. But I want, because this is a love theme, depicting like the loss of a loved, like a widower and his grief, I do think it'd be fun to find a way to fit that in a little bit. All right. Articulation, going back to our plans. Intimacy, just let's keep it smooth and legato. Let's do the same thing. Memory and time, nothing special. Melody, let's see here. I want to emphasize the extensions as my target tones. So target tones are the strongest notes of a melody. Usually the longest, most rhythmically emphasized notes in a melody. And they're usually taken from the underlying chords. So when you take the extensions and build on that, so if I have a C major chord, it's a great way to just kind of create that nostalgic feel. Hey, Vincent, welcome. There we go. Nice to see you, Vincent. Right? DSE Ray Valentine's tune. I think it'll be fun. So, I've got some good ideas here. I've got enough to get started on. So, let's start here. Let's get things started. I am going to need a time signature track because I want, let's drag this over here a little bit. I want this in 3/4 time for a waltz. I want a tempo track. Oh, do I have a tempo track already? It's hard to tell sometimes. Oh yeah, right here. Because I've been using this file for so long for my live streams. It's easy to forget what I have. Let's pop that there. And let's set our tempo to 60 BPM. All right. Next, let's stretch out the DSE ray, right? So we'll go. Let's do just one per bar. All right, so that's 8 bars. That actually works really, really well. 8 bars, that's the typical length of most chord progressions, most phrases. So that works very, very nicely. Now the trick is to create something that goes from kind of blocky. That's a very, very famous motif. So I don't want to just state it like that. So let's have some fun. My first instincts say, let's flip it upside down. First, let's set this to C major. Or on C, just so it's easier to work with. See, we move down by a major second, so let's move up by a second instead. We move up by a second, so let's move down by a second instead. We move down by a third, so let's move up by a third instead. Move up by a second, so let's move down by a second instead. We move down by a third, so let's move up by a third. And up by a second, so let's go down by a second. All right, so now instead of, we have this inverted version. I like that. That works. Yep, it's in 3/4/4. It's in 3/4. See? 1, 2, 3. Let's see here. Let's see here. Vincent, after months of pause, I did some more composing today. Not sure if I was a fail or a success, though. I want to create a new menu theme for my game that is a bit more ambivalent and less on the nose. That's fine. That's not, if you wrote, that's a success. All right, there is no failure in music except for not doing it. All right, so you did well. I just can't seem to make something I like. I kind of just need to be neutral and in the background. This is a struggle for me. Yes. Okay, so that struggle. I'm going to tell you some of the best advice I ever got. Not everybody agrees with the advice, but I really appreciated it. When I, very, very early in my career, when I had just started even looking into writing music, I had an incredible opportunity to meet Pasek and Paul, the songwriters for The Greatest Showman, among other incredible pieces, as well as Darren Criss, who some of you may or may not know from Broadway and theater. For me, I always knew him as Harry Potter from the Harry Potter musicals on YouTube from the 2010s. As a kid, I grew up loving those. And so I got to meet all three of them. I got to ask them questions about composing and songwriting and advice. And I remember one of the greatest pieces of advice I received from one of them. I can't remember who gave it to me, but one of them said, if you hate your own music, that is not necessarily a bad thing. They said, if you hate your own music, it means one thing. It means that your taste outranks your skill. And they said, and it is easier to improve your skill than it is to improve your taste. All right, so if you don't like your own music, that just means you aren't capable of writing something you like yet. You aren't at that skill level, but you can get there. You can keep going. If you always constantly love your music, then there's not a lot of motivation to grow. There's not a lot of motivation to keep studying, keep learning, to keep practicing, right? So yeah, it sucks, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. The Bitter Pill. Hey man, just want to say I love your generosity and creativity. I love thinking about systems and structures to constrain and produce creativity, and your method is inspiring. Thank you very much. Yes, I love building systems. I am neurodivergent, so having systems in place helps me so much. And one of my jobs before I went full-time with music is I actually taught a class on the psychology of creativity at the University of Michigan. Something I love is the research on creativity, and so much of it actually isn't this mysterious thing. A lot of creativity can be codified and practiced and improved. It's a skill. Being creative isn't so much a gift or talent, although it can be, as much as it is a skill that you can practice. It is the idea of making connections between things that wouldn't normally connect, like the idea of turning the Dies Irae into a love theme. But, good. Glad to help, Vincent. So let's make a chord progression now, shall we? So for me, we need to find a way to build a pattern. All right, chord progressions. The secret to all chord progressions is pattern. Let's zoom in on that. If you want a video that dives very deeply into this topic, I've covered this topic so many times, but this one right here, the hidden structure behind every great chord progression. Check it out. This one you will never struggle ever again with writing harmony. All right? The secret to all chord progressions is just harmony. So functional harmony follows a pattern of tonic, subdominant, dominant, tonic, or strong, weak. All right? That's functional harmony. We also have things like common tone equals the entire chord progression. All chords share the same common tone in. So they have at least one note that they all share. You can have structural patterns like sentence structure or period structure, sentence structure, etc. So the idea is like any pattern you build, the patterns can always be interrupted by the cadence. So this is the tricky part. I have this idea, this baseline that I want to use to create my chord progression. I now need a way to turn this into some kind of pattern. So first things first, let's build my first chord. We'll start with a C major 7. Because that's nice and easy. Now we need a cadence of some sort. The cadence needs to be a chord we can end on that will pull us right back to here. So E, we could try E dominant 7. That kind of works. It's not as strong of a pull as I would like. We could do... So naturally, first off, the chord that wants to pull mostly to C major is a G dominant 7. Oops, that wasn't it. Right, very, very satisfying. So that would be... So here we go. G dominant 7. This is the natural strong cadence. G dominant 7 does not share an E. Let's try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you drop a chord, a sixth, you get something called the substitute dominant. Nope, that was not. What do I want? So we have, let's see, it's a tritone. So we have a this is our thing. We want to move it down a tritone. So that's going to be a, yeah, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. There it is. And then this would have a similar kind of pull. This is called a substitute tritone. You might have heard tritone substitution, which has a nice strong pull, but again, no E. We could try a B diminished. Which is a nice pull. That doesn't work, so let's try tritone substituting that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one also has no E. What do we do? We could try E dominant 7. But that doesn't sound as satisfying. Let's see here. The Bitter Pill. The class you taught sounds wonderful. I'd love to see any materials or reading recommendations. Ooh, thank you. Yes, for creativity of psychology of creativity. I'm trying to think of some good recommendations. Anything by Csikszentmihalyi. A really good book. Flow. Book. Here we go. Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. Anything by Csikszentmihalyi is how you pronounce that. Csikszentmihalyi is a fantastic psychologist exploring things like flow and creativity. Fantastic, fantastic professor. Dr. Eric Fretz of the University of Michigan is another fantastic. If you can find any talks, anything by him on YouTube, on lectures, on emotional intelligence, fantastic, fantastic man. Recommend that. All right, but let's find a chord. You know what? We'll worry about the cadence later. I usually try to figure out my cadence first. Let's just try building a pattern here. That's easy. That's a chord combo I like to work with. I've used that in a couple things. So let's do C major 7 again. Let's try this. I like that. That's gonna be our ending chord. All right. A D minor. What is that? That is a D minor 6. No, wait, no, can't use that. Can't use that because there's no E. So that's not gonna be how we end it. So. We could do. I like the idea of having a common tone be what our chord is built on. So then we need to find an extended chord that has an E and a B. That works. Could be E minor, E major, and E sus. We could try. That's what we've been doing, a C major 7. We could try. We could do that. Well, we need the E in the bass. So we could try. We could try that. What was that? So then we could do. What are you guys thinking? Let's try this. So we could do. We could do that. Well, no, because I need the D. Well, yeah. We've got this inverted DSE ray that I want to use. I don't know if I like that. Let's try this. So this is an E dominant 7, which would want to go to A. So could we do an A of some sort? You know, what if we just tried A over D? Let's see what that works, what that sounds like. Without worrying about what chord that is. I kind of like that. Than it was. Ah, my keyboard is too tiny. Let's lower this down a little bit. Let's listen to it in 3/4 time. Let's mute that. Then we need, so I do like that. That works. Let's just try. Let's just crank something out real quick. We need, but we broke the pattern. And we can establish a new pattern. So the first 4 chords work because they all have B in common. Let's make these next ones work because they all have C in common until, well, then we've got. Let's just see if it works. Because who cares if we identify the pattern so long as it sounds good. That could work. I don't know. What are you guys thinking? We could. Let's listen to the whole thing. What was that? What's going on here? Well, that wasn't too helpful. Let's drop the bass line a little bit. Smooth out these chords here. This one sounds a little crunchy, actually. The A minor over D. We could do a D minor 7. Let's listen to that again one more time, then start writing the melody, if it works. All right, let me guys know what you think. Do you think this works? Do you think I need to keep working on it? Should I move on to the melody? What are you thinking? Ooh. The bitter pill. What if instead of the bass, the backbone was the highest voices? So you're saying like turn the melody, make the melody out of the inverted DSE ray. Oh. That could work. Okay, let's do that. Let's turn the inverted DSE ray into our melody instead. And then after the fact, I will harmonize it. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of rhythm. I'm going to use sentence structure to create my rhythm. Sentence or period structure. Period structure goes A, repeated A, new idea B, and cadence. Let's add it all. No. works. So something, okay, does anyone on Cubase know why my metronome is just not working? Like, straight up, it's not working. See? It's very annoying. Yeah, I have no idea. I've tried Googling it. I can't figure it out. All right, let's see here. It's annoying. So to keep things rooted to the inverted DSE, right? I'm just gonna do this. Oh no. All right, I lost you guys for a second. Are you there? It said I lost you for a second. Okay, let's try there. Let's try. Let's see. So I'm trying to just come up with a melody now without the harmony, which is something I don't usually do very often. All right, my phone is. Let's see here. Let's try playing this. See how this sounds for the melody. Mute that. Not the most beautiful melody I could have, but we can fix this up a little bit once we've got it harmonized. So the first thing I don't usually like having. So let's try an A minor chord instead of a C major, because I don't usually like having my melody start right on the root. So pop that up there. So let's do an A minor 7. Pop that down a little bit. Then we'll need. Let's try a B minor 7. because that would also have a D. Let's try putting it in an inversion. I like that. All right, let's try that. Let's repeat the chord progression. So we're going to need to create a new chord here because E does not belong in B minor 7 inverted. So it's going to go... Let's try... We don't want E. So what chords could belong? Let's try... Which notes could I have that would involve minimal moving for this chord, if we can create a variation. What we could do. So I want this E. Let's try copying and pasting that chord again. Let's keep the A here, because the A has been working nicely as a constant. Get the E, so A. That's what we'll do. An A sus4, 6. I don't know if that's actually the chord I'm using. It could be something different, but that's the spelling I'm using. And then, so now we need a new chord. So we have our idea, variation of our idea. We now need a new idea. Let's do something based off an A minor or D minor. So what I'm doing, for those of you who aren't following along, I have created a sentence structure chord progression. A. Repeat a variation of A. Now I'm creating a new one. B. A, A, B, C. That's what sentence structure is. Let's make that a D minor 7 in second inversion. So we need something with an F. Let's keep the A. Let's walk this down. So now it's a B diminished 6 or 7. And then we'll do an E sus. So now, even though we've been following this pattern of everything keeping a nice common tone, everything following a nice sentence structure, the cadence, the final 2 bars of any phrase, can always interrupt your pattern. So I am going to want to use an E dominant 7 at the end, I think. Just write one out real quick. Just because it's low-hanging fruit. It's going to pull us nicely to our chord. Let's stretch this out. And let's do a sus chord. Sus chords are wonderful little tools for creating those feelings of longing and grief. And I think I'm going to embellish the melody after a little bit. But I think this is it. I think after all this time, we finally have our chord progression and our melody. What are you guys thinking? Any ideas? Any opinions? Do you think it doesn't work too well? Keep in mind, this is a sketch. So let's, while you do this, unless there's someone with a very strong opinion on something better I could do, I want to take this as my sketch, and I want to start adapting it. Now, the first thing I need is I said I wanted some kind of pattern for keeping like the beat. Let's try super simple, super cliche, just an arpeggio. We're gonna create an open voicing. And then let's see what this sounds like. Let's try. I want some kind of arpeggio. I want something a little faster paced, but I want my idea, because remember these ideas that we came up with at the beginning. I wanted, where was it? Texture, I think. I want the accompaniment to track the BPM of 60 BPM. So low hanging fruit. We could try. Repeating this. This wouldn't really quite be playable though, this big chord. Not with the melody. What if I emphasized this a little bit more? That sounds almost too heavy. What am I doing? What am I doing? So the open course voicing chords sound fun. Try listening with the melody. I have an idea. What if we did triplets? And the way I emphasize my BPM is by emphasizing each beat. Ooh. It's a bit much, but I think we're on to something. I don't know. Does this sound almost too dark now? I do want this to still sound... I mean, it's a very grief-driven one, but... Then we could just take this entire idea. Because the same chord. We can try... I feel like breaking the pattern here a little bit. Then what happens if we make it a pattern again? Repeat our pattern. I don't know. This is sounding almost too dark for my liking. What do you guys think? Oh, yeah, okay, so you guys are liking it. And then this is C. Then try this again. I don't know if this is going to work or not. But it's worth a try. Chopping this up again, just following the same basic pattern I've been following. A again. Let's try this one. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to repeat this, and we're going to make that first half the intro. And we'll unmute the melody, and we'll see what problems pop up. What happens when I unmute the melody. Well, if we get this, let's increase this a little bit. Make the melody a little bit louder. Bring it higher. Why is my computer struggling? Why is my computer struggling with this? I think we're onto something. I don't think it needs to go that high. Why is my computer struggling to play this? My computer is very powerful. What is going on here? I have spent a lot of money on this computer to make it powerful. Let's do... My computer is struggling for no reason. I don't know why. Yes, 23. Thank you, 23. Glad you think we're onto something. Unfortunately, I have company coming over in a moment, so I won't be able to keep going for much longer. I want to address this melody a bit more. So this melody doesn't work quite the way I want it to. This first chord. That could work. Let's try that, and then we can... And then we need to keep the D here, because we're still building this off of the DSE, right? I don't like how... The melody just doesn't seem to fit the chords for some reason. Why is my computer struggling today? So we've got the... which is the inverted DSE, right? So I gotta keep that. These highlighted notes are the ones that cannot change. What if I added a little bit of a down moving move? Well, see, I like the chords in the left hand. What if I slowed them down? So we want... Why is my computer struggling? We'll see. Vincent. See, yeah, the bitter pill. Yeah, my sustain is messing up, I think. The sustain pedal is messing things up. Yeah, something's happening. I might need a new sustain pedal. No, because that wasn't it. So yeah, that's nothing to do with the sustain pedal. What is it? Let's watch up here. Oh, now it's doing nothing. Ah, so up here it says disc is getting up. Why is my disc going up? I have plenty of space. I don't know. I'll have to check contact memories. Uses data. I don't have to look something up. Unfortunately, though, my friends, I am running out of time. I have some company coming over, so I'm probably going to have to let you go. Next week, we'll have some fun with this. Vincent asked if next week is the live stream feedback. No, that will be the 27th. Next week is the 20th. We will have another stream like this, where it's just fun hanging out, making some music and whatnot. The 27th will be the day that we have live stream feedback. So not next week, but the week afterwards. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to call it a day here, my friends. Thank you so much to everyone who stopped by. Happy Valentine's Day to each and every one of you. All right, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Sorry we didn't finish the piece today, but maybe we'll have some fun with it next time, finishing it up. Thank you to everybody who stopped by. I had a lot of fun. I hope you all have a good time, too. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And yeah, if you got questions, let me know. Send them my way. Don't forget to follow, like, and watch the latest videos. They have not been doing well. The synth series, if you want to see more videos uploaded to that, make sure you like, subscribe, like the videos, share them to make sure that YouTube doesn't penalize my channel for not getting enough views by releasing videos. But I appreciate each of you. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all next week. All right, bye-bye.